Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on episode 7 of Own the Road with AutoTrader, where we make car stuff simple for Canadians. My name is Jody Lai, and I'm the editor-in-chief of AutoTrader.
And my name's Dan Alika, and I am the road test editor for AutoTrader. See, I did it again. I did it your way again.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
So today we are talking all about road trips because officially summer is here in Canada and road trip season has arrived.
Who doesn't love a good road trip?
I honestly love road trips. They're so much fun to me, and I really enjoy that the journey becomes almost as important as the destination.
Your memories from getting there, are often more prevalent, I would say. Like you reflect on those things that happen more so than, if there's a destination. And sometimes there's not a destination, especially during the pandemic. I found myself doing a lot of mini road trips with Becky just to get away.
Yeah, during the pandemic, road trips became super popular because there were so many restrictions that we really couldn't go anywhere. So it was a nice way for people to get out there and explore and do it safely and affordably. And back then, gas was really cheap.
Oh, the good old days. I also find road trips are very, almost intrinsically Canadian. They're woven into the fabric of...
Yeah, I think it's a rite of passage for a lot of Canadians.
And I think part of it is, this country is huge.
And there's so much to explore.
There's so much to explore, and you might have, family that's moved across the country. I remember talking to Ian McDonald, our chief marketing officer, who's from the UK. And we were talking a while ago about road trips and in the UK and the different way that you look at road trips, where here you're like, oh yeah, Montreal is only a 5.5, 6 hour drive. And in the UK, that's a mission. For us, it's that's a long weekend.
That's a pretty normal thing for me to do.
You could drive from the north of Scotland to the south coast of England in that time. And people, it's just not as part of...
Because once you're in the UK or in Europe in general, it's so cheap to fly places that people would just rather fly. You can hop on a €99 flight for the weekend, right?
Well, hold on. We're talking about the UK, so let's speak in pounds. We don't want to... Ian's probably listening. He's going to be like, how dare she? Euros.
But I think that's why road trips just aren't a big deal, because flying within Canada is expensive.
Fair enough. I don't know. I actually don't. I remember my family from Scotland came to visit when we were kids, and we did that a lot. They, where do you guys want to go? You're here for 3 weeks, and they said, well, where can we go? And so we started listing off some places, and they were like, how far is New York City? And we're like, oh, it's only about an 8-hour drive, and they were blown away that we would say it's only an 8-hour drive.
Because to them, 8 hours seems like a really long drive.
Yeah. And again, in Canada, I just think that that's something that you do. And you might have family, especially Becky's from the East Coast. She has a lot of family in Western Canada, right? So it's you fly, often you fly, but also, especially in the summertime, if you've got a lot of stuff with you, a couple dogs, it might be easier to just drive. And driving, 3 or 4,000 kilometers, it's really not that big of a deal.
It's actually not that big of a deal. Some of my best childhood memories are from family road trips we took.
In the van with the VCR?
Yes, that was one of them. If you didn't hear our story about, or our episode about...
Father's Day.
Yeah. My dad had this really great minivan that he put a VCR and a little TV, which as kids meant that there was no complaining through the whole road trip. We were quiet and lovely, and our parents were like, this was worth the investment.
Of course.
Why don't we start off with road trip tips?
Okay.
Because both Dan and I have been on many, many road trips.
Yeah.
It's actually one of my most preferred ways to travel. And while doing a lot of our road trips, we've picked up a couple bits of wisdom here and there.
Some road tips, if you will.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a bad joke.
I think snacks is a really big road trip thing.
It's a good... Okay, let's... Hold on. Before we get to the good stuff, let's start with the basics. Some of you guys out there are going to say I'm, lame for this. Preparation is key.
Of course.
Have a first aid kit. Okay.
Yeah, that's an obvious one.
That to me is one of, but I think it's, I've talked to some friends about that, and a lot of them, even parents, I was surprised, no No first aid kit in the car.
Yeah, so the last road trip Chris and I took, that was really, really big. We went to the U.S. We started in Vegas and drove around through like Utah, Arizona, California, Nevada. We covered, what was it, 3,400 kilometers?
Wow, you said this is, memories from a road trip, and I see you reading off your screen.
Because I don't remember the numbers. You know
Wow.
me. My brain doesn't register numbers. So it took us about 7 days to do the trip. And one of the first things we did was we bought a first aid kit.
Yeah.
Mostly because in a lot of the areas we were traveling, zero cell reception.
True.
So in case something were to happen, at least you have like the basics to take care of something.
And for Chris Smart, part of that first aid kit was a comb and some hair product to keep that perfect hair.
In case of an emergency,
Exactly.
he was prepared.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's something that a lot of people overlook, but just that basic first
Yes.
aid kit will come in so handy.
More basics. Check your tire pressure. Sounds stupid, but if you're going to the gas station to fill up or if you're charging your EV beforehand, check your tire pressure. That also goes with an oil change. If you know you're doing a massive road trip,
Yeah.
if you haven't had your oil changed, and have a mechanic give it a once over, because those are the things you don't want to have to worry about when you're thousands of kilometers or even a couple hundred kilometers from home.
That's
sucks.
just not something you want to take
Yep.
time away from your fun, right?
Exactly.
Get all the annoying stuff out of the way before you get going. Also, if you have the proper tire pressure, your fuel economy is going to be better. So, like, you want to take all those steps to make sure your trip is smooth.
Yes, so that we can go into one of those like deep dive tips. I think I've gone over this before on the podcast, but your tire pressure, you are going to check either in your owner's manual or in the door jamb. That label there, it's going to have tire size, all of that good stuff. It's also going to have tire pressure, and it'll tell you when it's, an empty car versus max load. So use that number. Don't use the number on the side wall of the tire. That's like maximum PSI. So that might tell you 55 PSI. That's too much.
You don't need to go that high.
You're looking
and you
at
shouldn't.
28, 29, 30, somewhere in that range for the average vehicle. I think like my Golf is 31 is the cold tire pressure. That's what you want to check. So there's our, the basics, the fundamentals of road tripping we've covered.
Okay, good. And then you can move on to the fun stuff like snacks. Dan and I are big snackers.
Oh my gosh.
And I've learned a lot of good snacks and bad snacks for road trips. So
Yep.
like resealable bags, very important.
Couple that you can wash out as you go. Oh, I got to say, also, I want to point something out. So I wouldn't say I was like, I definitely wasn't making fun of Mama Lie, your mom, when you were talking about this kind of habit
It's
that you learned.
eco-friendly.
So that's what my friend Carrie Smith listened to the podcast. He's a big fan, or at least he pretends
Thank
to
you,
be.
Carrie.
Thanks, Carrie. He said when we were talking about the washing out, he's like, you didn't even mention that it's like good for the environment. And I was like, that was an oversight on my behalf. Now, in fairness, I don't use Ziploc bags at home,
I
and I don't
know.
use saran wrap. We use like that kind of beeswax saran wrap, so it's like reusable and it's made from beeswax. It's totally sustainable. But I will say that, especially for road trip, Becky bought this literally. It's a funny name for it, a snackle box,
What does that mean?
and it looks like a fishing
like a
tackle
snack
box.
tackle box?
Yeah, and it's just snacks. And it's got
That's
all
brilliant.
these. I know, and so it has a lid like a tackle box. It like seals up, but it's got all these little compartments inside. So it is very much a snackle box.
I love that idea.
Yeah, and that's what we use. We used it just a couple weekends ago when we went camping for Canada Day.
And what type of snacks did you pack? Because the type of snacks is also very important for a successful road trip.
Well, there is a couple, important differentiations to make. Is like, what snacks did I pack versus what snacks did Becky, who takes, if there are two things she takes very seriously in life, it's preparation and snacks. Okay, so I didn't pack anything.
Okay.
She took care of it. If I were packing snacks for a trip, I would go with, kind of high protein stuff, especially if it's a long trip.
Yes.
Now, I don't eat meat, but beef jerky or any type of jerky is really good.
Pepperettes.
There's some good vegan jerky, but the best vegan jerky I've ever tried, Beyond Meat. And they don't sell it
Really?
in Canada yet.
Oh.
And man,
That's
That
so
is such a
interesting.
bummer because it's so good.
Yeah, so I would try to stay away from snacks that are super salty because that just makes you more thirsty, which means you're going to drink more water, which means you'll have to stop more for bathroom breaks. But it is important to stay hydrated. But again, like let's stick with water. Don't drink so much coffee when you're out on the road.
Yeah.
Don't drink so much soda. You
Or
know,
pop, because this is Canada.
Fine.
We call it pop.
A common theme is that Dan really likes to make fun of me.
No, I just like to keep. You call the grocery store the supermarket.
Yeah, so
The last time I remember supermarket was Sesame Street.
that's where I learned most of my stuff,
then
okay?
we grew up and called it the grocery store. I actually saw a headline in the Star this weekend, and it had like the word supermarket, and I was like, "Don't send to Joe."
Yeah.
Thank God
It's
for
a
that.
real thing.
For that Rogers outage, I couldn't have sent it to you if I wanted to.
Yeah, that's true. What else is a good... So, with food,
Yeah.
I would say try to avoid gas station food.
Oh, yeah.
I know it's like easy and convenient, but if you know that it will make you feel gross after, you're probably right. So
Yes.
like try to stay away from stuff like that. One of my favorite things about road tripping is discovering like little mom and pop shops that I can pop into, get like a quick sandwich or something.
Yeah.
It's like healthy, it's nourishing, and you get to meet like some neat people
Yeah.
who are local. It's a really great way to like
I've had
add
some,
to your road trip.
Yeah, I've had some great experience, like in Georgia, getting like little, hand pies. They look like pizza pockets.
Hand pies?
Yeah, they look like pizza pockets, but they're stuffed with like pie toppings.
Oh, amazing.
I remember my dad and I were road tripping through Scotland, and we stopped one more. I said to him, like, specifically, I want to avoid, chain franchise locations, whatever. So we were coming back from the Isle of Skye, which is this big island in the Highlands. And I said to him, first coffee shop we see, let's stop at. And we stopped in this place. I believe the name of this village is Kyle. And it's like just on the kind of the mainland end of the causeway. So anyways, we get there. I see this, it's called like First Stop or something like that.
Okay.
And it's a shipping container coffee shop.
Cool.
So I'm like, this is perfect. So we go in and I start looking around and I was like, well, this seems like more than a coffee shop. And there were like it was a mini distillery. And, I'm a big fan of gin. So not only did I get to bring home some amazing small batch
like
gin from
shipping
Scotland,
container small.
but the girl that owned it and ran it went to the University at Guelph. And that's where I grew up, and that's where my parents still live. So it was like such a small world
cool.
situation that because we randomly stopped. So guys, stop places, you'll meet cool people. It's really neat.
Yeah, I really so the other thing about road trips that I like so much is that like we obviously plan out things to do, to pass the time, and there's that destination. But I found that like with every road trip I've done, the best things I've seen were not planned.
Yeah.
Like they're just things that happened to happen, and they were amazing because we didn't plan for them.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my advice for road trips is that like don't get too caught up in the schedule.
Yeah.
Leave room for like fun random things to happen.
How about this? The story, being the journey and not the destination. Mm-hmm. Our podcast producer extraordinaire, Joseph, was telling me this morning that he was road tripping through Nova Scotia, put this Ford Mustang convertible in reverse, and the windows opened because of like a electrical short, and it was a torrential rainstorm, and it got rain in the car. Guess what? Joseph's never going to forget that. He didn't tell me where they stayed. He didn't tell me where.
It was a memory.
It was a memory.
Yeah. So even when bad stuff happens, it's still a memory. So just roll with it. Don't try to let it like ruin your trip.
Exactly.
Yeah. I would also say as part of your emergency pack to bring stuff like Gravol in case someone gets car sick.
Allergy pills.
Also, like if you have kids, you might want to bring barf bags.
True.
But one big thing is to keep them inside the cabin and not in the trunk, because if it's in the trunk, you're too late.
Yes, that is a very good point. Yeah.
And this is from experience. So just keep your barf bags in the car and not in the trunk.
Yeah, all of that stuff is just good to, that's good to have in the car regardless of a road trip or not. I have like that Rubbermaid tote. Remember I did that video that was like all the things I keep.
Yep.
Guys, go to go to the AutoTrader YouTube
It's a
channel
good
and you can
video.
watch this video, and it's all the things I keep in my car. And that's just true of, permanently. It lives in this little container, and I move it from press car to press car and whatever. But yeah, a lot of that stuff is in there so that when that road trip hits, you don't have to go scrambling around to find everything. You just have it with you.
Exactly. And again, if you have kids, you have to make sure you bring stuff to charge their iPads and their phones, because you do not want a cranky child who does not have games to play. So make sure to bring battery banks, USB cables, all that stuff. Something I always like to tell people is make sure you know the rules, the road rules, where you're going. Like, just as an example, a couple weekends ago, we did a road trip over to Montreal from Toronto, and they don't do right turns on reds on the island of Montreal.
Yeah, only in Montreal. It's not a Quebec-wide thing.
Yeah, which I was a little worried about, but also when we took a road trip to Detroit not too long ago, and I just wasn't sure what the rules were. So it made me really nervous. Yeah, so just do a little bit of research before you go, just to alleviate some of the stress while you're actually there.
That actually is another good point that I think is one of those oversights that could be bad news. Is there is a thing called an international driver's license. And it's not something that you have to qualify for the way that you would, for your provincial license wherever you happen to live. But there are lots of countries. There's a long list of countries where you need this document. And basically what it is it outlines that, yes, it's got your photo. So in Canada, you go to a local CAA location, and that's where you get your international driver's license.
And it's like cheap to do so.
Oh, it's like 20 bucks. But what it has, it kind of unfolds, and it has like different languages to outline, like, yes, this person is a licensed driver. And if you're driving in certain countries that require that, as silly as it is, it's basically like, an addendum. Like it adds on to your driver's license so that other countries see this kind of pamphlet-y, thing. It kind of looks like a paper passport.
Yep.
So if you're going somewhere, if you're traveling outside of North America, dig into it, look in and it never expires. That's the other cool thing. So if you're traveling somewhere and you're like, hey, I think I need it for the cost, it's well worth having as a just in case.
Yeah. And being prepared, like, for those just in cases are really important for road trips, because you don't want that stuff to ruin your trip.
No.
The other thing I like to tell people is stop more than you think you need to. And don't try to like power through huge legs of a trip, because driver fatigue is actually so dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's happened to me before where I'm like, oh, I think I can power through. But then you start to like nod off. And at that point, you have to stop. I know you're losing time, but just stop, get some fresh air, stretch your legs, and you'll feel so much better on the rest of your trip.
That's very true.
So like, driver fatigue is very serious.
Yeah.
Definitely don't let that happen to you. And one more tip that I really like to share is for EV drivers.
Yes.
So I've done a lot of road trips in EVs, which is definitely doable. I look for hotels to stay in that offer free EV charging.
Yeah.
And you can, any of those sites that you use to book hotels, you can filter by ones that have EV charging. And I use that all the time because you plug it in. And it's usually free with your stay. So you plug it in at night. By the time you wake up in the morning, you're at 100%. And it saves you so much more time that next leg of your trip. That's my big tip for EV drivers.
That is a good one. Do we have time to squeeze in a Ask an Expert question?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we have one, right?
Yeah, we have an Ask an Expert question. It's from Maroon.
Okay.
So Maroon's also asked a question on a previous
episode welcome
of
back.
the podcast.
Well, clearly we, have been providing the right answers. Because
I think so, yeah. And so here's the question.
Yes.
After my extended warranty expired with Volkswagen, I began to go to my family friend's mechanic. He's been great. However, since it's a one-man operation, sometimes I have to wait up to 4 days to get my car. So I'm now considering searching for another mechanic. What criteria must I look for? And how do I know that I can trust a mechanic? Great question.
That is a great question. And it's one that is like very complicated to answer.
It is very complicated, but it is also something that like a lot of people wonder.
Yeah.
And honestly, I know this sounds kind of dumb, but it's like a gut feeling. If you have a gut feeling that you can trust someone, you should be able to ask that mechanic all the questions that you need to feel comfortable. And if they don't want to answer your questions, that's kind of a red flag.
Yeah. And my other thing is, I mean, I don't let kind of that whole few bad apples thing ruin it. Like I know a lot of it can be a hot button topic for a lot of people. I'm sure there are, untrustworthy mechanics out there, but the vast majority of them are very helpful, are doing their jobs, and they are there, to help you out, but also to make a living, right? So the fear of getting ripped off, I think you need to be like kind of vigilant, but also trust that these people are doing right by you and their business, right?
Yeah.
Especially small business, mom and pop shops. They rely on you, right? It's like one of those things where you can't, if you stop coming, that's it for them, right? It's not like a large corporate
so they want you
chain.
to come back,
Yeah.
right? And that's the thing, is just ask questions. A good mechanic will be happy to answer your questions. As silly as your questions might be,
Exactly.
they will answer them. And
Yeah.
so that's our advice, is to ask questions, trust your gut.
The other thing is, I got to throw it out there, and I know everybody's different. I service my Golf at a Volkswagen dealer.
Same.
I have no qualms with doing that. I know some people talk about it being more expensive. I personally like the kind of it's more like kind of traceable. When you go to a place like that, where they can pull up your service records, your history a lot easier than, because if you switch from an independent to an independent, they're not going to pass along that information necessarily.
That's true, yeah.
And I've had no issues servicing at the dealer, and so I do that, with my Golf. But yeah, you're right. Your gut, word of mouth is a huge one.
That's true.
Because it can both make or break, that kind of business down the road, right? If I tell you, oh yeah, I don't go there, you're probably not going to go there.
Exactly.
Either,
Yeah.
right?
So ask your family and friends
Yeah.
who they go to, who they
Yeah.
trust. That's a big one.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for your question.
Yeah.
And if any of you have questions, you can email expert@trader.ca. I think it's about time that we start getting really personal questions for Dan.
Yeah.
So
Like, what's
please
with these
send us-
shoes, Dan?
So please send us your questions about Dan's shoes to expert@trader.ca.
Or if you want to know like what Joseph did with his rainstorm in the Mustang, we could, get into
We
that
could talk
too.
about that
Please,
as well.
ask away.
Anything.
Yeah. Anything.
Yeah, we're all good.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, everybody. Happy road tripping this summer. We're really excited.
Yeah,
And
go on a
tune
road
in.
trip. Get out there. Gas is
Yeah.
expensive, but get out there, because you can't get this time back in Canada. Wintertime road trips, not so
Awful.
fun. So spring, summer, fall, prime time.
It's your time to shine,
Go
road
explore.
trippers.
There's so much to do. And if you live in Ontario, we have that cool tax credit now for staying,
Yeah.
So, that's something that you can take advantage of. So, yeah, get out there, explore this beautiful country of ours, and tune in next time when we talk about supercars.
Supercars. It's going to be a fun episode.
That's good stuff.
So thank you so much for joining Own the Road with AutoTrader, and we'll catch you next time.